Welcome to the VEROSCOPE channel, where today we're going to be analysing the linguistics of Prince Andrew when he was interviewed by Emily Maitlis on Newsnight. Last time. Why have you decided to talk now? So Andrew starts immediately with a because. There is no good time to talk about Mr. Epstein, he says, and all things associated. And we've been talking to Newsnight for about 6 months about doing something around the work that I was doing. And unfortunately, we've just not been able to fit it into either your schedule or my schedule until now. And actually, it's a very good opportunity, and I'm delighted to be able to see you today. So, Prince Andrew's advisors have given him a little bit of flannel, haven't they? Because this is not the reason that Maitlis has come to see him at all. And this is not the reason why they couldn't meet until now. So immediately it's deceptive in a polite pattern. But can you see the deception? It's nothing to do with discussing his work. Perhaps this is Maitlis's deception to Andrew. Maitlis starts off with, as you say, all of this goes back to your friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. How did you first become friends? How did you meet? Andrew starts off with well, which is a deceptive marker, as we know. I met through his girlfriend, so we don't have a complete social introduction. We look for a lack of complete social introduction, and we mark it. Ghislaine Maxwell has no name at this stage, it's just his girlfriend, who and I'd known her since she was at university in the UK. And it would be, to some extent, minimisation. So we mark this pattern. A stretch to say that, as it were, so we mark this, we were close friends. We were friends because, reason why, of other people. And I had a lot of opportunity to go to the United States, but I didn't have much time with him. We look for if the person is conveying information or convincing. So here we have unnecessary language and the beginning of a defense architecture for what future questions might come. I suppose I saw him once or twice a year. Notice the I suppose. Perhaps, maybe, double minimization, maximum of 3 times a year. And quite often, if I was in the United States and doing things, and if he wasn't there, he would say, why don't you come and use my houses? So I said, that's very kind. Thank you very much indeed. But it would be a considerable stretch to say that he was a very, very close friend. So here we have sensitivity, don't we? But he had the most extraordinary ability to bring extraordinary people together. And that's the bit I remember, is going to the dinner parties where you would meet academics, politicians, people from the United Nations. I mean, it was a cosmopolitan group of whatever described as US eminence. So the paragraph is strange and immediately deceptive because it has reasons why combined with lots of minimization and lots of convincing. Prince Andrew immediately establishes distance with multiple hedging phrases, to some extent, I suppose, perhaps, maybe, and the repeated emphasis that Epstein wasn't a very, very close friend. And he also introduces the girlfriend who he doesn't name, so we have an incomplete social introduction. Note the phrase, as it were. It's a classic distancing mechanism, attempting to make the relationship sound theoretical rather than real. Combined with, because of other people, he's desperately trying to minimize direct connection. Section 2. Trust and royal access. Maitlis says, was that his appeal then? Was that what you, because you were perceived by the public as being the party prince, was that Prince Andrew interrupts? That's also a bit of a stretch. I don't know why I've collected that title, because I never really have partied. I never have really partied, he says rather. I was single for quite a long time in the early 80s, but then after I got married, I was very happy, and I've never really felt the need to go and party. And certainly going to Jeffrey's was not about partying, absolutely not. So, party is extremely sensitive, isn't it? How many parties do we have? Quite a few. Here we have self-censorship. Here we have justification. After I got married, I was very happy. So he's relating happiness to not partying. And I've never really felt the need to go and party. Notice, I've never really felt the need to go and party as an unreliable denial, isn't it? Because that's not saying that I haven't. I've never really felt the need, which is different than saying I have not. And certainly going to Jeffrey's was not about partying, absolutely not. Do you see how he's not actually denied being the party prince? He says, I don't know why I've collected that title. Because I don't, then the self-censorship. I never have really partied. So that's not saying he hasn't either. Here, he's almost saying that he did in the early 80s. I was single for quite a long time in the early 80s. Do you see? So we would mark this paragraph as deceptive, because we don't have a denial. Maitlis says, you said you weren't very good friends, but would you describe him as a good friend? Did you trust him? Andrew, yes, I think I probably did. But he doesn't answer this question, does he? But then Maitlis does combine her question. But again, I don't go into a friendship looking for the wrong thing. That's interesting. I don't go into a friendship looking for the wrong thing. If you understand what I mean. See, this is interesting, isn't it? Because I wonder what he meant. He felt the need to justify, but didn't explain what he meant. He just said, if you understand what I mean. But still felt the need to justify. I'm an engaging person. I think this is coaching. I want to be able to engage. I want to find out. I want to learn. I believe this is coaching because it's an unusual thing to say. And so, reason why. So I believe here's the coaching. Look at the pattern. I'm an engaging person. I want to be able to engage. I want to find out. I want to learn. So I've repeated what I've been coached. And so you have to remember that I was transitioning out of the Navy at the time. And in the transition, I wanted to find out more about what was going on, because in the Navy, it's a pretty isolated business because you're out at sea the whole time. And I was going to become the special representative for the international trade and investment. So I wanted to know more about what was going on in the international business world. And so that was another reason for going there. And the opportunities that I had to go to Wall Street and other places to learn whilst I was there were absolutely vital. So here we have extreme convincing architecture, completely unnecessary language, and he still hasn't answered. You said you weren't very good friends, but would you describe him as a good friend? Did you trust him? So he answers one question, but doesn't answer whether he would describe him as a good friend. But he does say it was absolutely vital that he went there so that he could learn a little bit about international business and go to Wall Street, of all places. Maitlis. He was your guest as well in 2000. Epstein was a guest at Windsor Castle and at Sandringham. He was brought right into the heart of the royal family at your invitation. Andrew. But excuse me, but certainly at my invitation, not at the royal family's invitation. But remember that it was his girlfriend that was the key element in this. He was the, as it were, plus one to some extent in that respect. So he can't commit to the plus one, but really wants to. And even though they're at Windsor Castle and at Sandringham, it's important to the prince to say it's not at the royal family's invitation, of which he is a part, but at my invitation. So it's deceptive as a sentence. Key element. His girlfriend. So he still can't call her by her name. Maitlis. Am I right you threw a birthday party for Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, at Sandringham? No, it was a shooting weekend. A shooting weekend. So here we have the repetition, meaning it's straightforward, meaning it's sensitive, just minimization, a straightforward minimization shooting weekend. So in his mind, it's absolutely vital, 3 times shooting weekend. Not a birthday party at Sandringham for Ghislaine Maxwell. The contradiction is stark. He claims Epstein wasn't invited by the royal family, but admits he personally invited him to Windsor Castle and Sandringham. The repetition of shooting weekend and addition of straightforward shows extreme sensitivity about this event. The cascade because and so when explaining why he trusted Epstein. 5 instances in one response indicates a desperate need to justify what should need no justification. Maitlis goes on to say, but during these times that he was a guest at Windsor Castle, at Sandringham, the shooting weekend, we now know he was and had been procuring young girls for sex trafficking. Prince Andrew. We now know that. At the time, there was no indication to me or anybody else that that was what he was doing. And certainly when I saw him, either in the United States, when I saw him in the United States or when I was staying in his houses in the United States, there was no indication, absolutely no indication. And if there was, you have to remember that at the time I was patron of the NSPCC's Full Stop campaign. So I was close up with what was going on in those times about getting rid of abuse to children. So I knew about the things where to look for, but I never saw them. Isn't that strange language? Isn't it? So you would have made that connection because you stayed with him. You were a visitor, a guest on many occasions at his homes, and nothing struck you as suspicious during that whole time. Nothing. This is a singular response. He's not done a singular response like this before. And my gut feel is that it's truthful. I think in Andrew's mind, he saw nothing suspicious. But that doesn't mean he didn't see anything. I think what that means is that in Andrew's mind, this word has a meaning, and Andrew didn't see anything that would be related to this meaning of suspicious. Maitlis, just for the record, you've been on his private plane. Yes, singular answer, truthful. You've been to stay on his private island. Yes. You've stayed at his home in Palm Beach. Yes. You visited Ghislaine Maxwell's house in Belgravia in London. Yes. So he suddenly shifts to monosyllabic yeses, responses, when confronted with specific facts about his involvement. The surrender pattern indicates he knows these facts are undeniable, and further elaboration would only worsen his position. So we have a baseline for Andrew's truth being the singular, unqualified yes, or nothing. So Maitlis goes on to say, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting and procuring a minor for prostitution. He was jailed. This was your friend. How did you feel about it? And Andrew says, well, I ceased contact with him after I was aware that he was under investigation. And that was later on in 2006. And I wasn't in touch with him again until 2010. So I just self-censorship after the reason why. It was just one of those things that somebody's going through, that sort of thing. It was just one of those things. He was convicted of soliciting and procuring a minor for prostitution. He was jailed. This was your friend. How did you feel about it? Let's just hear that again. So I just self-censorship. It was one of those things that somebody's going through, that sort of thing. Well, I'm terribly sorry, I can't be, so you know, no contact. Strange, isn't it? Very strange language. Maitlis says, when he was serving time, there was no call, no letter, nothing. No, nothing, says Andrew. And I believe him. Because this matches Andrew's baseline truth. Singular, to the point, unqualified. I believe this is true. In the same way that I believe Andrew didn't see anything in his mind suspicious. Maitlis goes on to say, he was released in July, within months. By December of 2010, you went to stay with him at his New York mansion. Why? Why were you staying with a convicted sex offender? Prince Andrew says, right, so this to me is coached. He's like ready for this big question from Maitlis. Right, he says. I have always, ever since this has happened, and since this has become, as it were, public knowledge that I was there, I've questioned myself as to why did I go? What was I doing? And was it the right thing to do? Now, I went there with the sole purpose of saying to him that because he had been convicted, it was inappropriate for us to be seen together. And I had a number of people counsel me, so this is incorrect spelling, in both directions, either to go and see him or not to go and see him. And I took the judgment call that because this was serious, and I felt doing it over the telephone. So here we have an action, doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. I had to go and see him and talk to him. And I went to see him, and I was doing a number of other things in New York at the time. So here we have the had architecture, and then the had architecture is removed with the attempt to say I was also doing other things at the time. And we had an opportunity, minimization of what he had to do. And we had an opportunity to go for a walk in the park. And that was the conversation. Coincidentally, that was photographed, which was when I said to him, this is important, I think, because it's unnecessary, which is when I said to him, I said, look, this is strong, this is strength. Because of what has happened, I don't think it is appropriate that we should remain in contact. So that's not ending a friendship, is it? That's remaining in contact. And by mutual agreement during that walk in the park, we decided that we would part company. And I left. Normally, when we see the word left in a statement, it can indicate tension, sometimes threat. And I left. Think about it. When somebody says, and I left, it's normally, there's an element of tension there. I think it was the next day, and to this day, I never, we've been learning about this word never, had any contact with him from that day forward. So let's have a look at this in detail. Prince Andrew claims the sole purpose was to end the friendship, then immediately contradicts himself by saying he was doing a number of other things in New York. The phrase chicken's way to describe a phone call to end contact with a convicted paedophile is linguistically bizarre. It reveals his need to justify the unjustifiable. The word right, followed by extensive self-questioning, shows maximum cognitive load. The phrase counsel me is unusual. So this is incorrect, do excuse me. This is incorrect, do excuse me. What I find interesting is these words had. I had to go. And this is a +1, don't forget. He's having us believe that it's a +1 of his real friend, Ghislaine Maxwell. So Maitlis, what did he say when you told him that you were breaking the friendship? Andrew says, he was what I would describe as understanding. He didn't go into any great depth in the conversation about what I was doing and what he was doing, except to say he had accepted whatever it was. A plea bargain, he'd served his time, and he was carrying on with his life. Which I mean, and I said yes, but I'm afraid to say that that's as maybe. But with all the attendant scrutiny on me, then I don't think it is a wise thing to do. So you can see why the press and the newspapers caused Andrew a lot of problems with this interview, because if only he listened to what he's saying like we are actively listening. It just makes no sense at all, does it? It makes no sense at all unless he had to go, he told us, didn't he, in the last paragraph. He had to go. It was vital, he said. Maitlis says, who advised you then that it was a good idea to go and break up the friendship? Did that come from the palace? Was Her Majesty the Queen? No, 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 no. I think I said one too many no's. That came from self-censorship. So there were a number of people who self-censorship. So some people from my staff, some people from friends and family I was talking to, and I took the decision that it was self-censorship. I had to show leadership, and I had to go. So here we have a repeat, and this word is repeating often. I had to go and see him, and I had to tell him, that's it. So this is interesting. That's it. This is, so he's having us believe that Epstein is just a +1 on a party invitation, which required a 4-day visit after Epstein's conviction. And he had to go. It was vital to go. And he told him, that's it. No more, in effect. What does he mean, that's it? And do you remember he said, look, which is strong. Maitlis says, that was December of 2010. He threw a party to celebrate his release and you were invited as guest of honour. Prince Andrew says, oh, in 2010 there wasn't certainly wasn't a party to celebrate his release. In December, because it was a small dinner party, there were only 8 or 10 of us, and I think at the dinner, if there was a party, then I'd know nothing about that. If there was a party, then I'd know nothing about that. So he's saying that if there was a party, then he doesn't know anything about it. But he's not denying that there was a party. So again, we have very strange defensive linguistics. There certainly wasn't a party to celebrate his release. But if there was, do you see? There certainly wasn't. If there was. You can see why the press absolutely jumped on this interview. Linguistically, it's awful. Maitlis says, "You were invited to that dinner party as a guest of honour." Well, I was there, so there was a dinner. I think it was, as you might put it. But yeah, okay, I was there, yeah. So he's struggling with the phrase guest of honour. But again, look at the linguistics. It's all broken. The cognitive break, the minimization, the hedging language, the well, which we always mark as potentially buying cognitive time. We have deception in the sentence. Deception doesn't necessarily mean that you're lying. Deception means that there are indicators of deception patterns. Remember, flags don't mean anything per se. It's the clusters and the superclusters that begin to indicate to us that the statement in itself is deceptive, or not, as the case may be. Maitlis says, "I'm just trying to work this out because you said you want to break up the relationship, and yet you stayed at that New York mansion several days. I'm wondering," and then Prince Andrew says, "but I was doing a number of other things while I was there." Justification. "But you were staying at the house of a convicted sex offender." Prince Andrew. "It was a convenient place to stay." Oh, Andrew. Whoever his advisors are or were, he's been terribly advised. He's been terribly coached. It was obvious that Maitlis was going to be constantly ambushing him. I believe he's been conned by Maitlis and her team and didn't realise the extent of the ambush that was coming his way, and thought, yes, there would be a few questions about it, but it would also be a lot about his work. And Maitlis has got no intention of talking about his work at all. So he's been hoodwinked, and his advisors have let him down from the perspective that they're meant to be protecting him. He says, "It was a convenient place to stay. I mean. So here we have the sensitivity, and we mark it up as such. "I've gone through this in my mind so many times. At the end of the day, with the benefit of all the hindsight that one could have, it was definitely the wrong thing to do. But at the time, I felt it was the honourable and right thing to do, and I admit fully that my judgment was probably coloured by my tendency to be too honourable, but that's just the way it is." Just awful. You cannot say your tendency to be too honourable requires you to go and stay with a convicted felon. for the offence that he was convicted of. We have a catastrophic contradiction. Prince Andrew simultaneously claims it was convenient to stay there, then it was honourable to stay there, a moral reason, that Andrew himself was too honourable. It was a character flaw of mine. I'm just too honourable as to be the excuse and the reason why he would do what he did. But in previous paragraphs, he's already told us why he did what he did. And he told us very clearly and multiple times. I had to, he said. I had to. This isn't anything to do with being honourable. It's deeper than that. He had to. In fact, in Andrew's words, it was vital. This is extremely strong language. These three explanations are mutually exclusive. The phrase tendency to be too honourable when describing staying in the criminal's house represents complete linguistic breakdown. The 6 consecutive no's when asked about the Queen's involvement shows extreme stress. The stuttering sensitivity marker, I mean, indicates cognitive overload as he realizes the impossibility of his position. So let's have a look at some of the linguistic indicators and patterns. It was the honourable and right thing to do, and you can't claim honour staying 4 days with a convicted felon. My tendency to be too honourable, self-aggrandizing while explaining the visit. Peak need to persuade. Convenient place to stay. Binary impossibility. It cannot be both practical and moral. The 6 consecutive no's. And the sole purpose followed by the doing other things. The extreme sensitivity markers. Do you remember? Right, he said, ready for the question. The chicken's way. As it were, times 4. The hedging cascade. I think, I probably did, perhaps, maybe, to some extent, I suppose, quite often, what I would describe as all hedging language. Lot of temporal impossibilities. A lot of contradiction or contradictory clusters. There certainly wasn't small dinner party, 8 to 10, not royal family's invitation, just staying at Windsor and Sandringham, shooting weekend times 2, +1 to some extent. We have some missing information markers, some pronoun violations, lots of unnecessary information. We have cognitive exhaustion markers. We have lots of passive language. This honourable pattern when he had to go and stay with a convicted felon. Yeah, the +1 impossibility. Prince Andrew claims Ghislaine Maxwell is the primary friend and Epstein is merely her +1. Epstein was, as it were, +1 to some extent, yet his actions flies 3,500 miles to New York, stays at the +1's mansion multiple times, goes to his private island on his private plane, etc., and tells him, that's it. Never mentions seeing Ghislaine. So what we've heard so far in the interview, we can conclude as deceptive. The "that's it" confession. Prince Andrew claims he told Epstein, "That's it." So the phrase indicates something was actively happening that needed termination. An ongoing arrangement or relationship existed, because otherwise he wouldn't say, "That's it." He wouldn't fly 3,500 miles to tell him that's it. Both parties understood what it referred to, although we don't. And the speaker had the power to end whatever it was. And this contradicts his claim of ceasing contact during the imprisonment, because otherwise there would be nothing to end in 2010. I had to go there and tell him that's it. So that's it proves something active required termination in 2010. You don't fly 3,500 miles to say that's it to nothing. So this is an inadvertent confession of some form of ongoing involvement that required the "that's it" trip. I wonder if there was some sort of blackmail going on. And I notice in the British press recently that Prince William, who seems to have fallen out with Prince Andrew and wants less involvement of Andrew, even less involvement than is already the case. But I notice that the King has, it is rumoured, it's been reported by royal commentators, that the King has told William that he doesn't know all that I know. In other words, the King is telling William that he knows more than William does. And I wonder if there was an element of blackmail going on, because Andrew's words are, "I had to go. It was vital. I had to. That's it. Look." Do you see? He had to go. I would be concerned that Andrew is being blackmailed. We have compulsion language. I had to go see him. I had to show leadership. I had to tell him. We've got external pressure markers. We don't have the vocabulary and the linguistics of voluntary choice. In fact, we have the opposite. We have the "I had to's." I had to. I had to. It was vital. If there was blackmail, then the timeline is interesting, because on Epstein's release, if he attempted to restart whatever the relationship was that had to end with the "that's it" meeting, if Epstein was attempting to restart and Andrew had to put an end to it, it would make sense. And it would require the face-to-face meeting. The chicken's way out. It couldn't be done over the telephone. So why blackmail potentially explains everything, the 4-day duration of complex negotiations, settlement, etc., mutual agreement, both understood the terms. We're told that in the Central Park, and it was important to Andrew, wasn't it, to tell us that this was photographed, possibly Epstein documenting compliance and further evidence. Too honourable. He can't reveal the true reason because we know that this is not the reason. To go and I'm too honourable and I had to go and see this +1 to tell him that because he's been convicted of these crimes, it just is nonsensical. We have passive language. We have actions under duress. We have a real missing why. He can't explain Epstein's acceptance. So the linguistic evidence of what we've seen so far suggests that Prince Andrew was both a perpetrator of sorts if he committed the acts which he is accused of and which he denies, and a victim of, in my opinion, I fear, of blackmail. And this would explain the complex deception linguistic patterns that we see throughout this part of the interview. So the Virginia Roberts connection. If blackmail exists regarding the Virginia Roberts allegations, then it would explain the energy spikes. It would explain the claimed amnesia about the photograph, the inability to provide coherent denials. The legal and personal consequences. And I wonder if there's an element of ongoing control even after Epstein's death. Because whoever owns the control still has it. So, what do you think? What do you think? I wonder if there is an element of blackmail. Certainly the linguistics support that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's analysis, and I look forward to carrying on with the next part of the course, and I hope that the course description has excited you. We're going to be going into real depth and real advances in forensic linguistic psychology analysis. And I look forward to speaking with you